Jillian Michaels, just a absolute kick-ass friend of the show. Somebody who's a total legend in the space. Somebody who's, as of late, become incredibly famous for standing up for women's sports. Pretty much the first person to stand up for women's sports, to get men out of women's sports. Taking on, so she's taken on big battles before. Here she has taken on like a 7-on-1 on CNN, dropping truth bombs about the central lie of the race Marxist, which is that slavery is a uniquely American and white person sin. Of course, this is absolutely absurdist, and the exact opposite is true. But nonetheless, the libs on CNN couldn't hear it and decided to instead scream in Jillian's face. This was the most viral clip on the entire internet yesterday. Here we go.
On into the Smithsonian. He's effectively now has some random person deciding what is appropriate for the Smithsonian to teach in terms of American history, things that don't offend parts of the MAGA base, right? So we're now literally reviewing parts of American history and parts of American culture to make sure it comports with dear leader and what the MAGA
Can we address
wants.
some of those things that are in there? Because have you looked at some of the things that are being reviewed?
Yeah, slavery was a bad thing that we could talk about.
Okay,
like
he's not whitewashing slavery. So
he's not.
He's not. No,
okay.
he's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. Well, let's talk about the fact that when you look at slavery, let's talk about the fact that
slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know who
in
was the first race to try to end slavery? Well, what's controversial?
I'm very surprised.
This is an extraordinary exercise in historical revisionism.
I'm really surprised.
Do you realize that?
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and
I'm
who
not.
was not.
What I'm trying to tell you is that
in the context of American history,
okay.
in the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And that's just not the truth. Like, for example, every single exhibit I have.
That clip goes on and on. It got millions of views on our channel, and we have some major fact checks on this because Jillian, as you will not be surprised to learn, was 100% right in that incredible superhero team up that she did, taking on 7 psychotic CNN libs as they decided to just scream over her. And that's how you know you've won the argument. Jillian Michaels joins the program live right now. Like the scene when Batman comes up through the floor and there's 7 bad guys and they're like, who is this? And it's like Batman just takes them all out, right? And that was like you on CNN.
Oh my gosh, Penny, I had zero intention, by the way, of going down that road. They ended up taking me down that road. And the point that I was initially going to make is that the installations the administration took umbrage with actually had nothing to do with slavery, because when I first heard that we were going to talk about this, I was a little bit alarmed. I was worried. And I thought, God, what is he trying to erase? So I had my podcast team reach out to the comms team for Trump. And I was like, I really want to understand this so I can speak on this intelligently and factually. What things are you referencing that are historically incorrect? And they sent me a list. It goes on for pages. I pulled out at least 10 of them for you if you want to go over some of them a little later on, what they are. But none of them actually address slavery that they sent to me. So that's why when I started listing the things, you didn't hear anything about slavery. And this woman made it about slavery. So I was like, actually, he's not trying to erase slavery. And I was about to insert all the things that were not about slavery. And then all of a sudden it turned into, white people are slavers. And I get it. It was one of the worst things in our history. Everyone knows this. However, to paint all white people with this brush, as pretty much every exhibit does, the white imperialist, it's constant. And again, I could walk you through it in all the different ways in all the different exhibits. But if you take that approach, it's not true, and it breeds more racial division and more anger, when the reality is that 2% of all white Americans owned slaves. So then people, of course, turn around and they don't like that number. So they're like, actually, it was like 25% of all Southern households. I'm like, right, but America was not just the South. And the reason that you're citing the South is because it was banned by that time in every other area of the country as being morally reprehensible. And by the way, let's not forget 350,000 white people did die for the cause of ending slavery. So my point is not that black people were not enslaved, not that horrible things did not happen and slavery is disgusting. It's that not all white people are bad. And the fact that that is a controversial comment when it's factually 100% accurate is really scary. It's scary as hell.
It's the cornerstone, actually, of the race Marxist, which is that we must focus in, we must zero in on this very short, de minimis time in American history and obsess over it forever, right? And use it for power forever instead of zooming out and looking at, one, the honorable sacrifices that were made by hundreds of thousands of Americans to end slavery, America and England being the first nations to end slavery, and then zooming out on the other side of slavery and looking at the histories of where slavery comes from. We just did that actually on Grok. Why don't we put it up here? So slavery has existed for 5,000 years in Africa. Shockingly, it still exists today, something they never talk about. You know, you'd assume if they were this obsessed with it, that they would go out in order to advocate against the 7 million people that are in slavery in Africa today. Like in the current present day, in the year of our Lord, 2025, if this is going to be your key marquee issue, something that was solved in America 150 years ago through the blood of the patriots of America, honorably and nobly, you'd assume if that was going to be your deal, you'd like go after the slaves in Africa in the current present day. Like that would concern you. And also you'd be concerned that like this was a practice that was exported from Africa to the West. And you'd say, well, hold on, maybe we should go back to the point of origin and solve slavery there, right? Because it's still currently happening today. But they never want to have that conversation.
No, it's just only like white people bad. And it's no one's not wanting to take responsibility for this. Nobody is trying to erase what happened. But what's alarming is exactly what you're saying. When you paint one race with this brush consistently across the board, everywhere from the Smithsonian to CNN, it begets racial division and racism. And it's funny, I was just talking to Guise and Esidu, who's often on Piers Morgan. I'm a huge fan of his. And I watched a clip of him talking about how when you only talk about white supremacy and you don't talk about any black degeneracy, it begets white degeneracy because white people start to get mad. And Admiral Corolla talks about this. It actually breeds racism within the white community when you do this. And my point is simply, nothing good comes from this. So let's have a fair and honest and accurate conversation. What I'm really trying to understand, though, Benny, is why we need to hold on to this narrative. I think that's what's the most alarming. Like I saw this post on X to me, and it was, you're denigrating all of humanity and trivializing these atrocities and horrors of slavery when you say it was just 2% of American whites that owned slaves. And it's like, because I'm telling you that the vast majority of white people weren't bad guys and didn't perpetrate evil, that denigrates humanity for you? What the hell are we actually trying to say? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority is of peoples that were coming to America, in order to escape some version of serfdom or chattel slavery or indentured servitude, especially like when you look at Irish immigration, when you look at the levels.
I pulled that out for you. Can I run you through some of these things at the Smithsonian? Okay.
I love that.
So let me start with the fact that, first of all, not for Gay Pride Month, when you first walk into the Museum of American History, the first thing you see is a gay flag, and it's all about gay progress, which, listen, as a person in the community, I'm very grateful that we can marry, very grateful we can adopt kids, but it's like, do you need to open the front exhibit is like the gays, like how it's something unifying progress for all Americans. It's not about slavery. So it's like, okay, what's the next thing that the administration sent me? They sent me an installation of an exhibit about a Latino history of the United States. So it talks about the history of Latinos emigrating to the US. And in particular, when it comes to Cuba, they talk about how because of the United States government backing Batista for financial gain, we begot this mass exodus from Cubans, and they still suffer from it to this day. Now, was Batista a scumbag? Yes. Did the administration at the time do that? Yes. There's no mention of Fidel Castro, who is the key reason for that emigration, who came in 1959, who was a communist, and who started killing people, jailing people. No mention of that. So it's just the white devil who backed Batista that begot the whole thing. So yes, we did it, but it's a huge lie of omission to leave that out, because that would make it far more balanced portrayal, right? It goes on and on. Just stop me at any time. Then it talks about how we've always feared non-white immigration. And there's no mention of the fact that historically people hated the Irish, hated the Eastern Europeans. Like
Italians were considered non-white immigrants. That's like that's an absolute matter of fact, by the way.
Right.
Like
okay. Yeah. Ready for the next one? Then there's the one on gender testing. And they go on to talk about how it was they perpetrated this essential sexual assault by making these athletes show their genitals. And I'm thinking, this is a cheek swab DNA test. Like, what are you talking about? Like, trying to imply that gender testing isn't fair. And not only that, it's somewhat tied to sexual assault and violation. and like, again, not about slavery. And then it sort of discusses like how it's bigoted to consider testing for gender in sports. The Star Spangled Banner. They go on to talk about how this guy was like a huge racist.
Really?
And yeah. Oh my God. He was a slaver and not an abolitionist. Okay, hold on. Then you've got.
Wait,
I can literally keep going.
The original Betsy Ross, because they had the original Betsy Ross flag. They had the original like Betsy Ross and the Star Spangled Banner. They had the original Star Spangled Banner.
Star Spangled Banner.
So they go after that guy in the exhibit.
Yes. They go after him in the exhibit, and they're like, the irony is that you would choose this song from this horrible person, and it's just like, okay, I mean, but where's the part about what it means today? There's no balance. That's the argument. It literally, Benny, on and on and on. And one of the most kind of concerning is they talk about, there's a whole thing about how cell phones, thank God we have cell phones because it catches all of these cops attacking Black people. And it makes it seem like it's omnipresent. It doesn't say, okay, hold on. In 2018, and I pulled the statistics for you, I think it was like 2019, I think it was 13 unarmed Black men and like 21 unarmed white men. And in 2020, I think it was like 18 unarmed Black men and 30-something unarmed white men. But the point is like this goes on, and it particularly for people who are forced to live in the realities of prejudice and aggression in their daily lives. And what it's trying to do is portray this image that all cops are doing this, and that all people of color are living in a reality of prejudice and aggression. It doesn't say like these horrible things have happened, and like all of the good work that's been done to turn this around. Like it just paints one picture that's constant. And maybe one of the most alarming is a video that essentially takes Jesus Christ and compares him to George Floyd. What happened to George Floyd is disgusting and it's devastating. But if you really want to upset people who are religious, compare George Floyd to Jesus Christ. And that...
Wow. Do you have video of that? I mean, like...
There's a 55-minute video of it.
That's incredible.
Okay? So hang on, I'll read it to you.
It's despicable.
Okay, so here we go. It's called the National Museum of African Art. The exhibit appears at the bottom floor of the African Art Museum, 3 levels down from the ground level. It's 55 minutes long. And it breaks down, right, all the horrible things. And then there's like a whole video of Blacks that have been killed at the hands of law enforcement. So it's like Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, Adam Toledo, George Floyd, Daunte Wright. But there's no balance of like good cops doing good things. It's just videos of this. So you're like, all right, well, this happened. Like, okay, let's not. But then it goes on, okay? The film artfully paints a picture that in 2020, systemic oppression was rampant with white supremacists, especially law enforcement, ruthlessly murdering Black people and suppressing their protests, which this is the part that I take umbrage with. If we're going to be dead honest, I don't remember suppressing any protests. I remember all these protests happening where everybody else going to go to church and visit their loved ones. So they certainly weren't suppressed. And then one segment places images of the death of Jesus Christ, the death of Che Guevara, and the death of George Floyd side by side and insinuates similarity between the 3 historical events. So again, let me be very clear.
That's blasphemous. That's blasphemous.
What happened to George Floyd is disgusting, right? it's horrifying.
What happened if George Floyd was a fentanyl overdose? So yes, that makes me angry at the Communist Party of China for bringing fentanyl into our streets. But that's based on the autopsy. That's what happened to George Floyd. So
I hear you, but let's just say I want to go there and say I don't want to watch. Right, like I was very distressed by that whole situation, and listen, I horrified by it all across the board. But when you compare George Floyd to Jesus, do we think maybe we could revise that?
Well, yeah,
that exhibit, or like this is the stuff. Like, there's no whitewashing slavery in any of the stuff I told you. Is there? Did I screw it up? Like, the issue is that it's like all white cops are bad. There's no counterbalance.
Yeah,
George Floyd is Jesus, and these are the sinners that killed the Son of God. Like, it's the overall arching theme that I was trying to get to the point. And then, of course, I was made a racist in the conversation. And somehow Abby suggested that I was trying to say, I don't know. I have no idea. Honestly, you have to watch. I couldn't be. I don't know.
You have the moral clarity and conviction to actually speak facts about America's history. And there's no such thing as a perfect country, but we have the best country out there that has ever existed for all people. And we should be incredibly proud of it. And everything from the African American History Museum to, every hall to the National Gallery of Art should be in coordination into the celebration of how blessed we are to live currently, right now, in modern day America. What I find
There's none of that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like precisely. So if there is any talk about slavery, it should be about like how horrible it is that practice was exported to America, how honorable it is that we put it down quickly, and we're one of the first nations to do that at great expense, and how it's ongoing practice in Africa today with 7 million people enslaved. That should be like the thrust, that we solved this issue 150 years ago and it's still currently happening in Africa. Like that should be like, okay, now let's solve the real problem.
I'm totally
right?
happy to.
Like,
listen,
it's like it's the same thing with George Floyd. Like you bring up George Floyd, it's like the focusing in. It's like the focusing in on like the single ugliest. Like no one's going to defend it, but like the single ugliest like parts of society, and not zooming out and seeing
that's the issue. There's
the majesty of the American experiment here, and
that's exactly it. That's
you can do that. You do that.
No one is trying to whitewash it. No one is saying it didn't happen. We're simply saying, like, let's put this in perspective here, and let's show the whole picture, and let's talk about how we've come together and how the country is a melting pot and how we've evolved and grown and all of the incredible things that we've done to collaborate regardless of your gender, your race, your sexual orientation. None of that is there. And
if you were in a relationship with someone, if you were in a relationship with somebody and like they couldn't get over something toxic that happened 150 years ago, you know, when Joe Biden first ran for president, and you if you what you did on CNN, was correct. You know, it was right. You brought facts. And the fact that they met, you know, this is what amazes me, Jillian. They met you with unintelligible shrieking.
And they called me a racist, basically.
Yeah, they were trying to debate you.
Oh, you're trying to say racism.
No, they weren't trying to debate you. They were like, how dare you question the core tenets of my religion? How dare you come into the holy of holies of the race Marxist? And destroy the central tenet of how we get power in modern day America in 2025.
I can't figure out, is that the answer? Because the reality is that nothing good comes of this when you don't show both sides of the story, when you're not honest. And it's funny because I got all of these hateful comments on my Instagram, and I have a black daughter, and people are like, oh, your daughter's going to grow up and hate you. This is the world you're raising your daughter in. And I thought, if me telling my daughter that the vast majority of whites didn't own slaves, and that's true, is a bad thing, I don't know what to tell you. I would much prefer my daughter think that not all white people are bad, considering she's being raised by white people, and she has your brother's white, and she has white friends, than her to think all white people are bad. But you don't call me crazy, Benny. I mean, so what truly alarms me about this is actually having a black daughter. I don't want her to think that all white people are the white devil. And having a white son, I don't want him to start developing some sort of resentment over this. He hasn't. But my point is simply, I see a lot of young kids that are moving more towards I'm just being honest, more towards this kind of tribalism. It's breeding the wrong things when you do this. And that's my true deep concern. So
that's the result of this. That's the intended result, actually. You know, critical theory says that they have to come up with some type of original sin to prove that the entire society and all of the systems have to be undone. So this has been written out. It's Cloward Piven from the 1960s. It's been written out. They already have a plan for this. This is part of it. And it is something critical that must be taken on. You took it on CNN, and it's one of the bravest things I've ever seen happen on cable news. Maybe you could conclude here, Jillian, by telling us, what is the Trump administration doing? It seems like you're in contact with them. What are they doing? They
sent a letter to the Smithsonian because I think 62% of the Smithsonian's revenue, and there's numerous museums under that umbrella, obviously, come from taxpayer dollars. The country's 250th birthday is next year, and I want to revisit some of these things. And like, let's add some texture and honesty and show other sides of this story. And like there's another one about Benjamin Franklin and how he discovered electricity, but he was also a slave owner. And it's like, okay, but he also, and then they claim he didn't free his slaves. And by the way, he did free his slaves. So instead they're like, he invented electricity, he's also a slave owner, and he didn't free his slaves. It's like, but actually he did. He became a huge abolitionist. He had a massive personal evolution, and all of that is not only misrepresented, left out, it's also misrepresented. So they're asking to have some factual fairness and accuracy here across the board on some of these exhibits. Mention Castro when you talk about people fleeing from Cuba. Like, that's what he's asking. He's not asking people to pretend like racism didn't exist, but how about the fact that not everybody did it? How about the fact that a lot of people banned it? How about the fact that we went to war over it? You could incorporate that.
Do you think there's anything, Jillian, in there about the massive pile of dead bodies left by communist regimes throughout history?
Nothing.
communist regimes have the single highest death count of anything that we've ever.
I'm going to say I don't
experienced
think so,
worldwide.
Penny.
Yeah, okay, that's funny. That's interesting. Where's the Pol
That's it.
Pot? Where's the Mao Zedong? Where's the Joseph Stalin? You know, where's the entire wings devoted to the slaughter that was done by communists?
They said that it's not
regimes?
there because it's the American History Museum.
Got it. Okay.
So
Yeah.
even when it's tangentially connected, like
Cool.
Cuba, it's been left out.
Ah, okay.
I really appreciate
Fascinating.
you.
Yeah, I mean that's what you know. It's amazing. You can see when the Cuban exhibit that you posted right here.
Right.
You can tell by who they don't criticize. You can tell where they're coming from by whom they do not criticize here. Right. You can tell it's a communist. You can tell it's a filthy communist writing this because they don't see communism as the bad thing.
They don't even mention Castro, Benny. He's not even in there. It's like, okay, the white government, the U.S. government, which we all know in the 50s was white. So clearly white imperialism, backed Batista for financial gain, destabilized the developed world, and begot the mass emigration from Cuba to the U.S. That's literally what it says. No mention. I'm laughing because it's so upsetting and so absurd. Anyway, I'm going to jump into this her take thing, but I'm super grateful for you.
They're angry. They're angry because you're like, now they've lost all these other battles. This is like the Holy of Holies. This is like the central lie and the central Helm's Deep, right? That they've been like holding on to. And now that this is getting the bark ripped off, they're losing it. The crime, deployments in DC, this was the safe haven for them. DC was the capital city for race Marxism, and now it's being destroyed. And you're a part of that. And